The champagne flute slipped from between Olivia Reed's fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor of their dining room. The crystalline explosion punctuated her husband's laughter, cold, dismissive laughter that bounced off the walls of their modern farmhouse-style home. A textile design company? Really, Liv? James leaned back in his chair, swirling his own champagne with casual indifference. Honey, you majored in art history. You haven't designed anything since college. Let's be realistic here. Olivia stared at the broken glass, watching as the expensive champagne, meant to celebrate their 10th anniversary, seeped into the cracks of the floor. She'd spent weeks practicing this pitch, rehearsing in front of mirrors, preparing for this moment when she would finally share her dreams with her husband. It's not just any textile company, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's sustainable fabrics with designs inspired by indigenous art forms. I've been researching it for months. James sighed, reaching for his phone as it buzzed with an incoming email. His investment firm never stopped, even on their anniversary. Indigenous art, sustainable fabrics. Liv, these are hobby interests, not business ventures. Besides, do you have any idea how much capital you'd need to start something like that? How many connections? She watched as he scrolled through his email, not even looking at her anymore. The candlelight caught on his expensive watch, the one she'd saved for 6 months to buy him last Christmas. His attention had already drifted away from her dreams, dismissed as casually as one might brush away a fly. I've been saving, she said, her hands trembling slightly. I have almost $40,000 set aside. This caught his attention. James looked up sharply. From where? Your decorating consultations. And the inheritance from my grandmother. James laughed again, that same laugh that had begun to sound like shattering glass to her ears. $40,000 is nothing in the business world, Liv. Nothing. Look, I know you're bored. Why don't you redecorate the guest room again? Or take another cooking class? Something fun. Fun. As if her passion was just a diversion, a way to keep a housewife occupied. Olivia slowly bent down to pick up the larger pieces of broken glass, careful not to cut herself. You're right, she said quietly. It was a silly idea. James's phone rang. He glanced at it and stood up. I need to take this. It's Richard from Singapore. He pressed the phone to his ear as he walked away. Richard. Yes, I was just reviewing those projections. Alone at the table, surrounded by the remnants of their anniversary dinner, Olivia carefully placed the broken pieces on her empty plate. The candles flickered, casting long shadows across the table. She looked down at her hands, artist's hands, her grandmother had always called them. Hands that had sketched and painted and dreamed. Hands that, for the past 10 years, had mostly arranged flowers, prepared dinner parties for James's clients, and folded themselves politely in her lap during his business dinners. Something fun, she whispered to herself, testing the words on her tongue. Her eyes drifted to James's laptop, still open on the sideboard where he'd been working before dinner. The screen showed his email inbox with a message from his lawyer about some investment papers needing signatures. She stood up slowly, moving toward it as if in a trance. The house was quiet except for James's muffled voice upstairs, closing another deal, building another piece of his empire. Olivia sat down in front of the computer and opened a new browser window. With steady fingers, she typed, "How to start a textile design business." As the search results loaded, something long dormant inside her chest began to unfurl. The morning after their anniversary dinner, Olivia woke before James. She watched him sleep, his features relaxed and boyish in repose, so different from the sharp, calculating mask he wore in waking hours. 10 years ago, she'd fallen in love with his ambition, his certainty about the future. When had that certainty transformed into something that crushed rather than inspired? She slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to the kitchen, making coffee in the pre-dawn light. While it brewed, she retrieved her sketchbook from its hiding place behind the cookbooks, a habit she developed over the years as James had made more and more comments about her doodling. The sketchbook was nearly full now, bursting with fabric designs inspired by her travels with James to Peru, Indonesia, Morocco. places where he'd closed business deals while she'd wandered markets and villages, collecting patterns and techniques in her mind and on paper. Olivia settled at the kitchen island, flipping through the pages. There was the series based on Moroccan geometric patterns, reimagined with subtle color variations. The Indonesian batik-inspired collection with its intricate, flowing lines. The Peruvian designs that incorporated ancient symbols with contemporary color palettes. "What are you looking at?" She started, closing the sketchbook instinctively. James stood in the doorway in his tailored pajama bottoms, hair perfectly tousled even in sleep. "Nothing important," she said, sliding the book under a placemat. "Coffee." James nodded, taking a seat at the island. "About last night," he began, accepting the mug she handed him. "I may have come across a bit harsh." Olivia kept her face neutral. "It's fine. You were right. It was just a passing thought."
"Good."
He smiled, relieved at not having to navigate an emotional conversation. "Because I have some news. I've been invited to speak at an economic forum in London next month, and I thought you might want to come along. You could visit those art museums you love, maybe do some shopping while I'm in meetings." She nodded, focusing on pouring her own coffee. "That sounds nice." "Perfect. I'll have Marissa book your ticket with mine." He checked his watch. "I need to get ready. Early meeting with the board." After he left for work, Olivia returned to her sketchbook, but instead of drawing, she flipped to the back where she'd started making notes after her internet research last night. Names of textile manufacturers. Sustainable fabric sources. Small business loan information. Contact details for a lawyer who specialized in helping women entrepreneurs. Her phone pinged with a text from Elena Cortez, her closest friend, and one of the few people who understood what it was like to be married to success. Elena's husband, Rafael, ran one of the largest construction companies in the city and was a frequent dinner guest at their home. "Elena, lunch today? Need to escape before I murder Rafael for leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor again." Olivia smiled and texted back. "Artigianos at 1?
I need your advice on something."
Elena was waiting at their usual corner table when Olivia arrived at the small Italian restaurant. With her sleek dark hair and impeccable style, Elena always looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, even in casual clothes. "So," Elena said after they ordered, "what's this advice you need? Please tell me it's something juicy. I'm dying for some drama that doesn't involve household management." Olivia hesitated, then pulled out her sketchbook. "I want to start a business. A textile design company specializing in sustainable fabrics with culturally inspired designs." Elena's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "And James is on board with this?" Olivia looked down at her water glass. "Not exactly."
"Ah."
Elena sat back. "So, that's why we're having this conversation. What did he say when you told him?" He laughed. Elena's expression hardened. "Of course he did. Then, like James and Raphael, think our brains stopped functioning the moment we said I do." "So, what are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to do it anyway," Olivia said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I have savings designs ready to go, and I've been researching manufacturers. But I need help with the business side, projections, marketing strategies. Things James would know, but you can't ask him," Elena finished. She reached across the table and squeezed Olivia's hand. "Luckily, you have me. Before I became Raphael's trophy wife, I had an MBA and worked in marketing for 5 years." Olivia's eyes widened. "You never told me that." Elena shrugged elegantly. "Raphael doesn't like to be reminded that I once had a career. He prefers to think I sprung fully formed from the head of Zeus, wearing Louboutins and knowing how to plan the perfect dinner party." She leaned forward. "But enough about that. Show me these designs." For the next hour, Olivia spread her sketches across the table as Elena asked pointed, intelligent questions about target markets, production costs, and brand identity. By the time their dessert arrived, they had the outline of a business plan. "You need capital beyond your savings," Elena said, tapping her spoon thoughtfully against her tiramisu. "Have you considered investors?" Olivia shook her head. "The only investors I know are James's friends, and they tell him immediately." "Not necessarily. Elena pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. There's a woman I know from my spin class, Diane Winters. She made a fortune in tech and now runs an investment group focused on women-owned businesses. Let me text her.
Now.
Olivia felt a flutter of panic. This was moving faster than she'd anticipated. No time like the present, darling. Besides, if James is speaking at that economic forum next month, it gives you a perfect window to get things moving while he's distracted. As Elena typed out a message, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from James. James, need you to host dinner for the Harrisons tomorrow night. Marissa will handle the catering. Wear the blue dress I bought you for Christmas. Important clients. Olivia stared at the message, noting the lack of question marks, the assumption of her availability, the directive about what to wear. Problem? Elena asked, noticing her expression.
No.
Olivia put her phone away. Just James being James. Elena studied her for a moment. You know, when we met 5 years ago, you used to light up whenever his name was mentioned. Now you get this little crease between your eyebrows. She demonstrated with her finger. Right here. Olivia touched the spot involuntarily. Things change. Yes, they do. Elena's phone pinged. And speaking of change, Diane is free for coffee next Wednesday. She's interested in hearing more about your concept. A strange feeling washed over Olivia. Part terror, part exhilaration. Then I better get ready to pitch it properly this time. Over the next week, Olivia operated in 2 parallel realities. In one, she was the perfect corporate wife, hosting the Harrisons, attending a charity gala on James's arm, listening attentively as he explained to their friends why the economy was doing what it was doing. In the other, she met with Elena after her morning run to refine her business plan, created digital versions of her designs using an old tablet she dug out of the closet, and practiced her pitch in whispered tones while James was in the shower. The meeting with Diane Winters was set for Wednesday at 2 p.m. at a small coffee shop downtown, far from James's office or his usual lunch spots. Olivia told him she was attending a workshop on Japanese floral arrangements, the kind of activity he found appropriately decorative and unthreatening. Diane turned out to be a brisk, silver-haired woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She listened to Olivia's pitch without interruption, examined the digital portfolio on Olivia's tablet, and asked several penetrating questions about production costs and market differentiation. Then she sat back and studied Olivia with an unnerving intensity. Elena tells me your husband isn't aware of your plans. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. He knows I'm interested in textiles. He doesn't know I'm serious about turning it into a business. And why is that, exactly? Because he doesn't believe I can do it, Olivia answered honestly. And I need to prove to myself that I can before I face that conversation again. Diane nodded slowly. I understand that better than you might think. My late husband told me my software idea was cute back in 1985. I built a company worth $300 million by the time he died. He never did quite recover from the shock. She pulled a business card from her jacket pocket and slid it across the table. I'm interested in your concept, Ms. Reed. Send me your formal business plan by Friday. I can potentially offer $150,000 in seed funding for a 15% stake. Olivia stared at the card, her heart hammering. Just like that. Just like that, Diane confirmed with a small smile. Women with fire in their eyes and something to prove are often the best investments. But I should warn you, once you start down this path, your marriage will never be the same. Are you prepared for that? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications Olivia wasn't ready to examine. I'm prepared to build something of my own, she answered carefully. The rest will have to sort itself out. That night, as James worked late at the office, Olivia sat at their dining room table, the same table where he had laughed at her dreams, and finalized her business plan. When she was done, she closed her laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured garden that had been designed by a landscaper James had hired, in a style he had chosen, with plants selected for their ability to impress his colleagues at summer barbecues. She couldn't remember the last time she had made a decision that wasn't filtered through the lens of James's preferences or expectations. Even her wardrobe had gradually transformed to suit his idea of what a successful investor's wife should wear. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was James. "I'll be home late," he said without preamble. "The Singapore deal is complicated. Don't wait up." "All right," she replied. "James?" His distraction was evident even through the phone. "Do you remember when we first met? At that gallery opening?" There was a pause. "Of course. You were wearing that red dress."
Why?
She smiled faintly. "No reason.
Just thinking about it.
See you later." After hanging up, Olivia returned to her laptop and opened her email. With a deep breath, she attached her business plan, addressed the message to Diane Winters, and pressed send. 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in the security line at the airport, her carry-on suitcase beside her, James checking emails on his phone as they waited to board their flight to London. "Remember, we have dinner with the Blackwoods the night we arrive," he said without looking up. "He's bringing his wife and daughter. The daughter's studying art history at Oxford. I told him you two would have lots to talk about." "That sounds nice," Olivia replied automatically, her thoughts elsewhere. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out discreetly to see a text from her newly hired attorney, Catherine Park. "Catherine, incorporation papers filed. Congratulations, you are now officially the CEO of Artisan Thread LLC." A surge of adrenaline shot through Olivia.
It was real now.
With Diane's investment secured, the legal framework in place, and manufacturing partners lined up, her company existed as more than just an idea scribbled in a hidden sketchbook. "Who's that?" James asked, glancing at her phone. Olivia locked the screen. "Just Elena wishing us a good trip." James nodded, already returning to his emails. "I told Marissa to book you for that private tour of the Victoria and Albert Museum on Tuesday while I'm at the panel discussions. They have an excellent textile collection. Should be right up your alley." "That's thoughtful of you." And it was, in his way. James had never been deliberately cruel, just dismissive, preoccupied, and utterly convinced that his vision of their life together was the correct one. The flight to London was long, with James either working or sleeping for most of it. Olivia used the time to review contracts on her tablet, careful to switch screens whenever James stirred. They arrived at their hotel, a sleek, modern establishment in Mayfair favored by business travelers, early in the evening. While James showered and prepared for dinner, Olivia slipped down to the hotel's business center. "I need to print some documents," she told the concierge. "And I'd like them delivered to me directly rather than to the room." "Of course, madam. I'll have them sent to you in the hotel bar in a sealed envelope." The dinner with the Blackwoods went as expected. Business talk dominated, with occasional attempts to include the wives in conversation. The daughter, Emily, was indeed studying art history, but seemed more interested in her phone than in discussing Renaissance painting techniques with Olivia. Back at the hotel, James fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the travel and the 3 scotches he'd consumed at dinner. Olivia lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the envelope waiting in her suitcase, contracts needing her signature to finalize agreements with 3 sustainable fabric suppliers in Indonesia, Peru, and Scotland. The next morning, they parted ways in the hotel lobby, James for his economic forum, Olivia supposedly for shopping. Instead, she found a quiet cafe and spent 4 hours on video calls with Elena, now her unofficial marketing director, Catherine, and their newly hired production manager, a talented woman named Layla who had 15 years of experience in textile manufacturing. For the next 3 days, Olivia maintained her double life with increasing confidence. While James networked with global investors, she built her own network of sustainable fashion contacts in London. When he thought she was touring museums, she was meeting with a boutique owner interested in carrying her first collection. At night, she listened to his detailed accounts of his panels and meetings, offering appropriate responses while mentally reviewing fabric orders and marketing strategies. On their final night in London, James insisted on taking her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the Thames, a rare gesture that reminded her of their early days together, when he had been proud to show her off, interested in her opinions, excited to build a future with her rather than for her. "To us," he said, raising his wine glass. 10 years and counting. Olivia clinked her glass against his.
To us.
James took a sip, then set his glass down. I've been thinking. After seeing how you lit up in those museums this week, maybe I was too dismissive about your textile idea. She nearly choked on her wine. Oh. As a hobby, I mean, he clarified. You clearly have a passion for it. I could set aside some space in the guest house for you to work on designs. It would give you something fulfilling to do while I'm traveling so much. The words "something to do" hung in the air between them, as if she were a child needing to be occupied, a pet requiring stimulation. That's generous of you, she said carefully. James reached across the table to take her hand. I know I've been preoccupied lately. The Asian markets are volatile, and the new regulations have everyone on edge. But I don't want you to feel. He searched for the word. Unappreciated. There was genuine concern in his eyes, and for a moment, Olivia glimpsed the man she had fallen in love with, the one who had once supported her dreams instead of supplanting them with his own. I don't feel unappreciated, she said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I understand how important your work is, and I understand that you need your own interests. He squeezed her hand. We're partners, Liv. Different roles, but partners. Partners. The word echoed in her mind as their food arrived. Was that how he truly saw them? Or was she simply a supportive asset, like a well-chosen stock in his personal portfolio? They returned to their hotel room after dinner, slightly tipsy from the expensive wine. James pulled her close as soon as the door closed behind them. I've missed you, he murmured against her neck. We've both been so busy lately. Olivia closed her eyes as his hands moved over her body with familiar expertise. It would be so easy to fall back into the rhythm they had established over a decade, his ambition setting the tempo, her adaptability following his lead. So easy to accept the space he was willing to allot her in his carefully constructed world. His phone rang, the distinctive tone he used for important clients. James pulled away with a groan of frustration. I have to take this. It's Takahashi. Of course, Olivia said, stepping back. While James took the call on the balcony, Olivia moved to the desk where his laptop sat open, his presentation for tomorrow's closing panel displayed on the screen. Out of habit, she began reviewing it for typos, a service she had provided throughout their marriage. As she scrolled through the slides, a file name in the taskbar caught her attention. Read_family_trust_vision_pro PDF. Frowning, she clicked on it. The document opened to reveal legal language she didn't immediately understand. She scanned it, picking up phrases like reallocation of assets and management control. Her heart began to pound as the meaning became clear. James had amended their family trust to give himself sole control over investment decisions for both their assets, including her inheritance from her grandmother, the money she had told him she was using for her business. The balcony door slid open as James finished his call.
Sorry about that.
Where were we? He stopped when he saw what was on the screen. A flicker of something, guilt? Annoyance? Crossed his face before it settled into a calm, reasonable expression. I was going to discuss that with you when we got home, he said, moving to close the laptop. It's just a routine adjustment to protect our investments. By removing my authority over my own inheritance. Olivia's voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. Liv, you know I respect you, but investment strategy isn't your area of expertise. Your grandmother's money would do better in my managed accounts than sitting in a savings account earning minimal interest. And if I want to use it for something else? His expression sharpened. Like what? The moment stretched between them, a crossroads with no signposts. Olivia could feel the weight of 10 years pressing down on her, 10 years of gradual concessions, of dreams deferred, of identities slowly eroded. Nothing, she said finally. You're right. You know best. Relief washed over his face. I'm just looking out for our future, Liv. He came around the desk and kissed her forehead. Now, let's pick up where we left off, shall we? Later, as James slept beside her, Olivia slipped out of bed and into the bathroom. She closed the door quietly and sat on the edge of the tub, her tablet glowing in the darkness as she typed an urgent email to Catherine. How quickly can we transfer the funds from my personal account to the business account? James is planning to move the money into investments under his control. We need to secure it immediately. The response came within minutes, despite the late hour. I can process this first thing tomorrow. 9 a.m. London time. Need your electronic signature on the attached forms. Olivia signed the documents, her hand shaking slightly. There would be no turning back after this. When James discovered what she had done, not just starting the business behind his back, but moving her inheritance before he could gain control of it, the careful equilibrium of their marriage would shatter. She looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman who stared back at her wasn't the eager young art history graduate who had been dazzled by a handsome investment banker a decade ago. This woman had shadows under her eyes and a determination in her jaw that hadn't been there before. Something fun, she whispered to her reflection, echoing James's dismissive words from their anniversary dinner. Then, with a grim smile, let's see how much fun it really is. 2 months after their return from London, Olivia sat in the stylish downtown office space that now housed Artisan Thread LLC. The industrial loft had been transformed with sleek workstations, fabric sample walls, and a conference room where her designs were prominently displayed. 6 employees, all women with impressive credentials who had been undervalued at previous jobs, worked at their desks while Layla supervised the unpacking of their first production samples. Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. He knows. Just overheard Raphael on the phone with him. Brace yourself. Her stomach clenched. The moment she had been both dreading and preparing for had arrived. Over the past 2 months, she had maintained her facade at home while building her company with frantic energy. James, absorbed in a new Asian investment initiative, had barely noticed her absences, accepting without question her explanations about volunteer work and art classes. The deception had been easier than she'd anticipated, which was perhaps the most damning testament to the state of their marriage. She had incorporated a company, leased office space, hired staff, and launched production, all while James remained oblivious to anything beyond his own ambitions. But now the reckoning had come. It had been inevitable from the moment last week when Artisan Thread had been featured in a prominent design blog highlighting Olivia Reed's innovative approach to cultural textile preservation through modern, sustainable fashion. The article had spread quickly through the industry, and it was only a matter of time before it reached James's circle. Apparently, that time was now. Olivia? Her assistant, Megan, appeared at the door. Your husband is on line 1. He sounds upset. Olivia nodded, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone. Hello, James. What the hell is going on? His voice was cold with fury. I just got a call from Rafael Cortez asking about my wife's textile company. My wife's company that I knew nothing about. I started a business, she said simply. Artisan Thread. We're launching our first collection next month. With what money? The question was sharp, dangerous. My inheritance. My savings. The silence that followed was brittle. The money that's supposed to be in our joint investment account. The account I tried to access this morning to make a transaction, only to find it empty. Yes. You went behind my back. His voice had dropped to a near whisper, which was more frightening than his shouting. After everything I've done for you, everything I've provided. Olivia closed her eyes, steadying herself. I tried to tell you about my dreams, James. You laughed at them. Because they were unrealistic. Now he was shouting. Because you have no experience, no business acumen, no connections. I found them, she interrupted. I built them. While you were dismissing me as your decorative housewife, I was building something real. This is insanity. I'm coming down there.
No.
The firmness in her voice surprised even her. I'm in the middle of a workday with my team. We'll discuss this at home tonight. You don't give the orders in this marriage, Olivia. Apparently, I do now, at least where my company is concerned. 7 o'clock at home. She hung up before he could respond, her hand trembling but her resolve firm. The confrontation that night was everything she had feared and, in some strange way, hoped for. James arrived home to find her waiting in the living room, a glass of wine in hand and documents spread across the coffee table. He threw his keys onto the sideboard with enough force to leave a mark. Explain yourself. I already did. I started a company designing and producing sustainable textiles based on cultural art forms. We have 3 collections ready for market and pre-orders from 4 high-end retailers. With my money, with my inheritance, which was never yours to control. James paced the room like a caged animal. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? My own wife starting a business without my knowledge or input. Raphael actually asked if I was your secret investor, trying to play some tax game. Of course, that would be his primary concern, how it reflected on him. I'm sorry if this has embarrassed you, she said, not sounding sorry at all. That wasn't my intention. What was your intention, Liv? To prove some point? To punish me for working too much? To exist, she said quietly. To create something that's mine. To use my talents for more than decorating this house and hosting your clients. He stopped pacing to stare at her. You've been lying to me for months. Yes. While spending our money. My money. On this hobby business that will probably fail within a year. Olivia lifted her chin. Diane Winters doesn't invest in hobbies that fail. James went very still. Diane Winters? The venture capitalist. She provided additional capital for a 15% stake. She believes in me, even if you don't. A complex emotion passed across James's face, surprise, confusion, and something that might have been a reluctant flicker of respect. But it was quickly replaced by cold anger. So that's it? You've made your decision without any consideration for our marriage, our future? The way you amended our family trust without consulting me? Olivia countered. The way you make decisions about our lives without considering what I might want. James had the grace to look momentarily abashed, but quickly rallied. That was different. I was protecting our assets. No, you were controlling them. Just like you've tried to control every aspect of our lives for years. Olivia stood up, suddenly tired of the circular argument. I don't want to fight, James. I want you to understand that this is happening. Artisan Thread exists. It's growing. And I am its CEO. And what does that mean for us? He asked, his voice suddenly quieter. It was the question she had been asking herself for months. I don't know, she answered honestly. That depends on whether you can see me as a partner rather than a possession. Whether you can respect my ambitions the way I've respected yours. James ran a hand through his hair, his expression shifting between anger and uncertainty. I need to think. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need. Olivia gathered her documents. I'll be in the guest room tonight. The weeks that followed settled into an uneasy truce. James retreated into his work, coming home late and leaving early. Olivia divided her time between the office and their increasingly empty house, both of them orbiting each other like wary planets, neither willing to be the first to breach the chasm that had opened between them. In that space, Artisan Thread flourished. Their first collection received glowing reviews in industry publications. Orders increased. Diane introduced Olivia to her network of retail contacts. Elena's marketing strategy generated buzz on social media. Then came the invitation that changed everything. The Textile Innovation Summit in Chicago? James asked, finding the embossed envelope on the kitchen counter. You're speaking at this? Olivia looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing the quarterly projections.
Yes.
On the panel about sustainable manufacturing in luxury markets. Something shifted in James's expression, a complex mixture of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. That's impressive. It was the first positive thing he'd said about her business. Olivia felt a small spark of hope. Thank you. James studied the invitation, then set it down carefully. I heard something interesting today. From Richard Chen. Oh. Richard was one of James's oldest clients, a shrewd investor with interests in manufacturing across Asia. He mentioned that his wife bought some pillows with, and I quote, the most extraordinary fabric patterns I've ever seen. From a company called Artisan Thread. James looked at her directly. He asked if we were related to the founder. Olivia held his gaze. What did you say? I said you were the founder. His mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "He wants to meet you to discuss potential distribution in the Asian market." The irony wasn't lost on either of them, that James's client was now interested in her business, that the connections he had once insisted she lacked were now potentially opening to her through him. "I'd be happy to meet with him," she said carefully. James nodded, then hesitated, an uncharacteristic uncertainty in his demeanor. "Liv, I've been thinking. About us. About your company." She waited, heart hammering. "I was wrong," he said finally. "To dismiss your ideas. To try to control the inheritance. To," he gestured vaguely, "to treat you as less than an equal." It was as close to an apology as James Reed had likely ever come. Olivia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you for saying that." He moved closer, reached for her hand. "Is it too late? For us?" The question hung between them, weighted with a decade of history, some of it beautiful, some of it painful. "I don't know," she answered truthfully. "I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. I'm not sure we know how to be married to the people we've become." "Maybe we could try," he suggested, his voice uncharacteristically tentative. "Maybe we could start over. As equals." Olivia studied his face, searching for signs of the dismissive husband who had laughed at her dreams. What she saw instead was a man confronting the possibility of loss, not just of a wife, but of the comfortable certainty that had defined his worldview. "I'd like that," she said finally. "But there would have to be changes. Real ones." "I know." He squeezed her hand. "I'm willing to try if you are." 1 year later, Olivia stood at the podium in a crowded hotel ballroom, accepting the Emerging Designer of the Year award from the Sustainable Fashion Council. The audience, filled with industry leaders, investors, and fashion journalists, applauded as she held up the sleek glass trophy. "Thank you," she said into the microphone. A year ago, Artisan Thread was just a concept sketched in a hidden notebook. Today, we're in 27 luxury retailers across 3 continents, with a dedicated team of 30 employees who believe in our mission of cultural preservation through sustainable design. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. In the front row sat Elena, beaming with pride. Beside her was Diane Winters, elegant in a jacket made from Artisan Thread's signature fabric. And next to Diane, watching her with a complex mixture of pride and something like wonder, sat James. "I've learned many lessons on this journey," Olivia continued. "About business, about design, about perseverance. But perhaps the most important lesson was about belief. Believing in myself when others didn't, but also being open to the possibility that people can change, that relationships can transform, that we can all grow into better versions of ourselves if given the chance." Her eyes met James's, and he gave her a small, private nod. After the ceremony, they moved through the crowd together, accepting congratulations and exchanging business cards. James stood slightly behind her, letting her take the lead, stepping forward only when introductions were made. "Mr. Reed," said a silver-haired man Olivia recognized as the CEO of a major department store chain, "you must be very proud of your wife's accomplishments." "Incredibly proud," James replied, his hand warm at the small of Olivia's back. "Though I can't take any credit. This was all Olivia's vision from the beginning." The acknowledgement, public and unequivocal, washed over her like a warm wave. Later, in their hotel suite, Olivia kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the sofa, trophy still in hand. "I can't believe we beat out McAllister Designs. Their sustainable bamboo line has been getting buzz for months." James loosened his tie, sitting beside her. "Your Indonesian batik collection was superior. Everyone could see that." She smiled at him, studying the changes a year had wrought. He looked different somehow, the sharp edges softened, the constant tension in his jaw relaxed. Or perhaps it was simply that she was seeing him through new eyes, the eyes of a woman who had found her own power and was no longer in his shadow. Their marriage had nearly ended in those turbulent months after her company launched. There had been bitter arguments, tearful recriminations, and finally, painful honesty. They had sought counseling, not expecting miracles, but desperate for guidance through the wreckage of old patterns. Slowly, painfully, they had begun to rebuild. Not the same marriage, but something new. James had learned to listen, to recognize that his expertise did not extend to controlling her dreams. Olivia had learned to voice her needs without apology, to claim space without resentment. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when old habits emerged, his tendency to take charge, her instinct to defer. But they caught themselves more quickly now, recalibrating with a hard-won awareness. "I was thinking," James said, interrupting her reflections, "about the space in your Singapore office." Artisan Thread was expanding to a new location in Asia, their third office after New York and London. "It's a good location," she replied. "Close to the textile district, good transport links. It's also 3 blocks from where Reed Investments is opening our new Asian headquarters." He glanced at her. "Convenient, wouldn't you say?" Olivia tilted her head. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" James shrugged, an uncharacteristic gesture for him. "We could split our time. 6 months in New York, 6 months in Singapore. Run both our companies from the same base." "As equal partners," she said, testing the words. "Exactly." He took her hand, running his thumb over the wedding ring she still wore. 2 CEOs under one roof. Olivia considered the proposal. A year ago, it would have felt like another attempt to absorb her independence into his world. Now, it felt like a genuine effort to integrate their separate strengths. "I need to discuss it with the board," she said. "And we need to work out the logistics." "Of course." James nodded. "It's just an idea. Your decision." Your decision. 2 simple words that represented how far they had come. Olivia set her trophy on the coffee table and curled her legs beneath her on the sofa. "Do you ever think about that night? Our anniversary dinner when you laughed at my idea?" James winced slightly. "More than I'd like to admit. Not my finest moment. I was so angry," she admitted, "but also grateful in a strange way. If you had been supportive then, I might have let you take control of the business. It might have become another extension of your world instead of something truly mine." He was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. "Your company saved our marriage," he said finally, "by nearly destroying it first." Olivia laughed softly. "That's one way of looking at it. I'm serious." James turned to face her fully. "I didn't see you live. Not really. Not until you forced me to." She reached up to touch his face, tracing the lines that hadn't been there when they'd first met. "And now I see a brilliant CEO who happens to be my wife. A woman whose designs are being featured in Vogue next month. A businesswoman Richard Chun calls the future of sustainable luxury." His eyes held hers. "And I count myself lucky that she's giving me a second chance to be the partner she deserves." Olivia leaned forward and kissed him, not the perfunctory kiss of their later troubled years, nor the passionate one of their early days. This was something different, the kiss of equals who had chosen each other with open eyes. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled against the night sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, board meetings, production deadlines, expansion plans. The delicate balance of their reconstructed marriage would face fresh tests. But tonight, in this moment, Olivia Reed, artist, entrepreneur, wife on her own terms, felt the satisfying weight of her trophy beside her, the warm presence of her husband beside her, and the knowledge that she had built something lasting, not just a company, but a version of herself that would never again be underestimated. "To new beginnings," she said, echoing their toast from that fateful anniversary dinner that now seemed a lifetime ago. James smiled, the pride in his eyes unmistakable. "To your success." "No," Olivia corrected gently. "To our success. Different paths, equal value." He nodded, understanding the distinction. Different paths, equal value. As they clinked glasses in the quiet hotel room, Olivia thought about the woman she had been a year ago, trembling with anger at a broken champagne flute, her dreams dismissed as casually as spilled wine. That woman could never have imagined sitting here now, award in hand, husband humbled, future brilliantly, blindingly open. She had started a company to prove something to herself. Along the way, she had proven something to him as well. That dreams, when pursued with passion and determination, were never something to laugh at. They were something to respect, to celebrate, to build a new kind of partnership around. And that, Olivia reflected as she leaned into her husband's embrace, was the most unexpected success of all.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.